what we're gonna do instead of me dragging the video camera in here. So, okay, I think I'm recording. Hey, Sam, it's my face. But I'm also gonna share my screen since that's mostly what we're doing here today. Beautiful. Okay, hurrah, everyone. So for this weekend, this is I believe is it Monday or is it Sunday that I've said, hey, take a read of chapter 3 and answer these here questions. It's a little bit more of what we have already been done, but getting a little bit more into the specifics. Although it's it's not going quite as far as I would like yet. Most of the chapter is like, how can music teachers integrate reading into what they're doing rather than talking specifically about the analogs, what phonemic awareness is in music. It's still like here's what it is and here's how we can shore that up for English language learning, but through music activities, which not a bad thing at all. I'm not upset about it, but and I was mentioning this the other day, goat in a boat. So Mrs. C, the first grade teacher, is sitting with her 7 students in a reading circle, and they're doing some phonemic awareness by reading goat in a boat. Listen to the word and write the beginning sound of the word on their boards. The first boards, not boards, boards. First sound or the first word is boat. And of course, you want your kid to write B. That's what you're hoping for. So in that case, it's not just phonemic awareness, but what are they showing their awareness of when they write B on their boards? I mean, it is phonemic awareness, but by doing this, is that a phoneme or is it something else? It's something else because I would have said it's a phoneme. What is it?
Graph.
It's a grapheme. Yeah, you got it. It's a grapheme. It's a letter. It's a letter, and it's the letter B. And in this case, it's a grapheme. And the only reason that I'm using the term grapheme instead of letter is because we could have a word like this. And in order to write that, you wouldn't just write this, or like T, the letter T on the board, you would write TH. And whichever the one for this, I think that's that one, the one that's voiced, this. As opposed to the unvoiced TH, which is, yeah, like a snake with a lisp. Sorry, I'm 5. Also, Choral Methods asked me today how many cups of coffee I had, and it was only 1.5 at the time. So I think we're still doing okay. But they're showing their awareness of the sound and then writing it, translating that to a grapheme. Now for us, during our last class, I had said, yeah, we do that, but we also we can't just write down one grapheme. You know what I mean? Like we need to have context for when we associate symbols with things. So, this lady is writing boat, there's a boat and a goat. So listen to the word boat and then tell me what the first sound is by writing the letter. They write B. We can't really do that with a musical example in the same way. Like the way that I would think about maybe doing that might be something like, we would have to have prior knowledge. They would have to know like quarter notes and eighth notes, right? Or even long and short in some way, even just that vocabulary. And if I said, this sound is going to be made up of longs and shorts, I'm going to do, 4 heartbeats. If this was an elementary class, you don't probably know how I like to use heartbeats in an elementary class. I'm going to do 4 heartbeats worth of sounds, and you're going to tell me whether they're long or short. Or I might say, if we make it really boat and a goat, listen for what happens on the first heartbeat. Is it long or short? And so I would have to do, let's see. So if we have ba, 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 Is it a long or a short that happens on the first heartbeat? That would be as close as I could get. And if your kids actually knew the, if they knew the symbol and they knew quarter, eighth, quarter, what you'd want them to do is be able to say it's a quarter note on the first heartbeat. That's like the analog to this goat in a boat wearing a coat, that's happening in this story. You see how we need like extra context to make the analog? We can't just say, is that a quarter note at the beginning? Because there's no other sound to compare it to. We don't know. That could be depending on the meter signature or what other things are in there. And that might be an eighth note. It might be a half note. If we're in 2/2 time, heavens. So, that's kind of where we are when we try to do musical analogs. And the reason, if you looked over the questions at the end of the reading that I have, there's a reason that we're doing this in class right now, is because I'm like, hey, think about an activity that you would do with your students that is similar to this thing. And so I'm like, well, let's make some musical analogs today and like actually make the jump over and not just say, what could we do? Because yeah, of course, in elementary music, or even in secondary music in some way, shape, or form, we could talk about what English sounds happen. We have lots of songs that kids sing in choir. We have lots of vocabulary in band that we could go over and actually have them like take apart the words. So like what this chapter prescribes, sorry, Sam, you're probably like, what are you doing? Excuse me. But what this chapter prescribes in some of these cases is saying something like, if we had beginning band and saying, okay, we have flats in our key signature. This is the word flat. What, I'm going to say the word for another one. You tell me what grapheme or what combination of letters makes the sound sharp. And at the beginning of sharp, what's the first sound you hear? You want them to say sh, and then we'd say, well, what letters make up the sh sound? And we would hope that they would put this. So that's most of what this chapter is detailing out to you, is how to do those things in your class. But again, that's English language literacy, as opposed to music literacy, where if we wanted to make something that's really like that, if we want to talk about music reading, I love this magnet. I don't know who did this. There's a part of me that wants to say that like probably Renee sewed these at home and like did it. I don't know whether these exist like that or not, but it's a Renee Golden thing to do. So if she did it, she's the real MVP. If she ordered it, she's also the real MVP, because who thinks of that? All right, so a musical analog to something like that, that's outside of like the rhythm that we just did. Let's think of something that's like a pitch analog to this. If we were to say, like, what might that be like? Put like a connection to phonemic and graphemic awareness. What would that be like in a class that we might teach?
Would it be a C on the staff, or would it be more like?
I'm so sorry. That really was my knee that just did that. Gross. Ugh, getting old sucks. So, thought process of, so right there, Morgan. It's literally a staff maker right over there. So the idea of being able to say, is it a C on the staff? Okay, we've got that. What would that activity be like? We want them to know that it's a C on the staff, or that it's C written. How do we have to set that up?
We could listen to it first, review it.
So in that case, do we just and hope that they know that that's C? Your perfect pitch kids are gonna do that. Maybe Susie Piano, she ruins it for everybody else often. She's like, that's a C. Or that kid in perfect pitch in your training class that you're like, okay, what are you even doing here? What are you here for? Love you. Shouldn't you be out of this class? But so
would context around the note help, like giving maybe like the leading tone and something about it?
We sort of have to give them some kind of context. So if we want them to know like what that is, so let's think of a task or something or a way in which we would want them to know what note it is or what's going or how, or we can't just say, okay, here's middle C and then what? Now name it or write it or whatever. Now, Lexi, you do have not writing middle, ooh, why did I just do that? One of the activities that you guys have is things that you would want them to know by sight. Would we want them to know that that's middle C by sight? Sure, yeah, we want them to know that. And depending on what type of kid it is or what they're playing, we might want them to know additional information related to that. Who would know that?
Ooh.
Trumpets would know that, right? Oh, Ryan, I love that. He's like, ooh. He's a singer. Ooh, 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 there we go. But our trumpet players, ooh, you know what? That brings up an amazing thing. The fact that Ryan just went ooh, and the fact that Lexi goes trumpet. Literacy means different things to different people because
I have no idea what that means in relation to a trumpet.
so it's valve combinations. So if we were to put up D like this, a trumpet player should know that. They should know boop, and they should be able to put down these two fingers to make that valve combination. And so to them, that's like a whole nother symbol system to be able to use on like a fingering chart. Or, oh God, what position is that? Hold on. There's someone help me. Lord help me. Ba, ba. This is the way, right? Lexi, am I going the right way for this? Do you know what I'm doing?
The chromatic scale.
The
chromatic scale.
Yeah, but I'm translating it over to trombone slide positions because I suck.
Okay.
Is that right?
That's 6th position. Well, hang on, I'm transposing to you now. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Because the trumpet's in D flat, but the trombone's in C.
So then the next one up is that 2nd position? Is that right?
I think it's 7.
Shoot. I wish. So there is a way to do this and turn this into what the slide positions are. I just have to figure out what they are. And then our next one up is this one, that one, and then that one, and then that one, and then just open. We're back. We're back. Okay, so Ryan, these are the valve combinations on like the chromatic scale. So you start C, C sharp, D, G sharp or E flat, E, F, F sharp, and then you're back to G, just a different lip position. And there's a way to trombone this that lines up, the valve combinations line up to
176 5 4 3 2
176. There.
It took me a minute.
Thank God.
Are there ones for A and B too?
They start over. So, well, kind of. G sharp, A flat is open 2 and 3, right?
G sharp, Yeah, 2 and 3.
So we've got fifth, fourth, third, second, and then we're back to first position. And you would think it would keep going, but then when we get to G sharp / A flat, we've already have we had that valve combination? It's fifth again. Why does it go like that? Why do you have to do that to us, trombones? What a hot mess. But so for somebody like me who literally does not, I know all of the valve combinations for everything, but I don't know what the trombone positions are. So I'm like, what position is this? So if I were going through and looking at this, I've got to go through more than one system. I've got to go, okay, that's first position. This is sixth position. So my decoding is going nuts. But what we would want from our kids, when we talk about like sight words, things they should recognize just from the beginning, this is like the word the. We want them to know it. We want them to know that's C or that's B flat or whatever. And I want them to know this is how we finger it, or it is first position. This is like the word as, which doesn't make any sense. Why do we say as instead of ass? Sorry, I'm not swearing. I'm just saying, why do we pronounce it that way? Why do we say as, was? Why isn't was? And then why is gas? Why isn't it gas? As, was, gas. English is stupid sometimes. So these are some of these words where we're like, gas sort of follows the correct rule. Gas is what we expect it to be, but as and was definitely are not. Their vowels aren't doing what they're supposed to do, or their consonants aren't doing what we expect them to do by any stretch of the imagination. So as is another one of those like sight words that we want kids to know right away. And some of those sight words that we would want people in band to know would be like these. We want them to know the pitches of a scale and to say, I know what position that is. I know what fingering that is. I know, Same thing with like my violinists. I want them to know finger patterns for commonly used scales. Like when they see D major, they should know, open 1, regular 2, 3, open. I want them to know that as they go up the scale. And then if we have like a natural in a G major scale somewhere, that's going to be a lowered whatever it is. It's going to be a low 2. It's going to be a low 1. Well, it's a low 2 in that scale. Or a regular 3 if we're going below D. Anyhow, I do want them to know that. So for them, that's something they need to know is open 1, 2, 3, and they're right next to each other. It has to be like that. That's a sight word for them, and what pitches those are associated with as they, occur on the staff. So that's like a sight word for them. But then we've got like this stuff. We're like, how do we do phonemic awareness and turn that into a grapheme or whatever in the same way as goat in a boat? We sort of skipped ahead. I'm asking you guys about sight words later in there. What musical sight words do you want your kids to know? We just kind of went over some of those. But let's get now to like the phoneme graphing thing. I just took the road ahead of me that was given to me, and so we're gonna double back.
So like with D and G being the same, they're not, know what I'm saying? G and C being the same, is there like humming involved to like alter the pitch?
It's how you buzz. It's the speed of the buzzing that you're doing, essentially.
Yeah, it's the speed of your air plus the speed of your buzz.
Weird. But cool.
Yeah, it's super. So if you ever see like beginning brass folks just warming up in their mouthpieces, you're like, like that type of stuff, or they're practicing, going like that. They're just just buzzing up and down to the different things that equate, you know what I mean? Like these, where you would have the same valve combination, but it would be higher or lower. And so you get used to what it feels like. And you also get used to what your airspeed has to be like when you do that. Isn't that wild though?
Yeah.
Brass instruments do that. And it's honestly why I suck at them a lot more, because yeah, you do change your airspeed, and there are things about woodwinds where you change it, but for the most part, like what we do, except flute is really kind of the oddball out of the woodwind family and the whole flute family, because we essentially aim our air in. We're like the closest to basketball players. We aim our air into a hole. We skim it across the top of a hole and hope the right amount gets in. Then we like do different stuff with that. But when you're playing a reeded instrument of some kind, it's a little bit easier. And usually we have like octave keys on the saxophone. God bless the saxophone. We've got octave keys. You do change your air a little bit. You do change things about the shape of your mouth, but it's nothing like playing brass. It's a whole nother animal. But obviously we've got more, we got a lot more of this to do. And the saxophone, bless it, it's got palm keys up at the top. Clarinet is just a hot mess. And then there's the bassoon. We just won't talk about the bassoon. It's a whole thing. Bless it. Okay, so we do have this extra context to set, but I do kind of want to see what we would do for like phonemic to graphemic awareness. So we might give our students a task that's something like, if we were to set the context and say, this is do, what solfege syllables do we have? And we would hope that they might say, right? That's what we hope. We hope they say that. Or if we say C is do, if we say C is do, and here's your pattern, we would hope that they would write so that to me is a phonemic to grapheme awareness type of task for a music student. We have to set the context in order to do it though, you know what I mean? And there's a bunch of different things that you could ask them to do. It could just be solfege. It could be write the pitches. It could be, if you're still at a place where the kids have not learned things on the staff or they haven't learned the solfege that goes with it, if we're talking about young kids, we might have high, medium, and low even. And we say, hey, we're gonna have 3 pitches here. They're high, medium, and low. Will you tell me what order they go in today? So here's low, medium, and high. Will you listen for me and tell me which ones they are? We would want our kids to say high, mid, low, right? Great. That's a phonemic awareness task to me. And it's not a discrimination task, because we're not asking them to tell whether something is the same or different, although it could be, right? We could do a discrimination task. What might a discrimination task sound like? Orally in music. We do a ton of them. We do so many in element. I know that's not helping you. Telling you that we do a lot of them isn't helping you get the answer, but we do it a lot. You might, just by knowing that, something you say where they tell the difference between something.
High and low.
High and low. Great. High and low. Fast and slow. Soft and loud. Slow and fast. Did I say that one already? I have no idea. Short and long, smooth and detached, or long. Well, I already said long and short, and I don't want to use those as articulation words. Anyway, all of that might be a discrimination task, and you can do that with a whole bunch of different things. And you can do that, and it makes sense in literally almost any context, whether it's big kids or little kids, right? Have we ever done that in like high school music? We use discrimination in high school music?
Was that note right?
Was that note
Did
right?
you play a flat or a natural?
Did you play what was written? Or tell me the difference between the way these two things sound, or describe the difference, or are they the same? Or did you notice what was different about the way that I did that one? We do that a lot in modeling, right? And we ask the kids to hear the difference, and we say, focus on these two and see what you can pick out that's different between the two. And usually when we're talking about our high schoolers and stuff, it's a stylistic thing, or maybe it's like a technique thing. We do this in choir all the time with vowels, right? Listen to the way that I sing this passage, and you sing one with like really crap vowels. And then you sing the next one with like good vowels, whatever that means. You know what I mean? Depending on where you are and what you think a good vowel is and what type of choral tone you value. Because that means something different to everybody. But yeah, there's discrimination even in those. And that's just like phoneme discrimination. But eventually we get to a point, like I live in this world all the time with middle schoolers, where I will ask them something like, God, this blows my mess out. Because middle school singers, sadly, this is not it's going to sound like a rip on singers, but it's not. They just don't know the expectation necessarily. A lot of my kids look at the music just for the words, and then they parrot what is being sung just back to them, you know? So I might sometimes say, all right, look at measure 37. And that might be what they have. We're in 5/4 today, everybody. We're in 5/4 today. And I might ask them something like, all right, y'all, does this go up the entire time? And I will have some kids go, yeah, it goes up. And I'm like, does it go up the entire time? Is there a leap anywhere? And they'll be like, oh yeah, there's a leap. Where is it? In between the third and the fourth note. Oh, thank God. But when we try to sing it, that is something that could happen. Some of you might be thinking shepherd's hay. Anyway, I didn't realize I wrote that when I wrote it, but I want them to be able to see the difference between this and something else that they have already sung. Like, they will sometimes just keep on going up, and I'm like, why are you doing that? It goes down. Or they have a pattern earlier in the piece that has them do something like it. Let's say it goes like that. They will want to say, if this happened earlier in the piece, but this happens at measure 37, guess what they're singing? They're singing the one they've sung already, all the time. And so we actually have to ask them, I'm like, all right, so what's actually written there? Which sounds correct? You know, when we really look at the pitches and see where they go, follow along with your fingers, what happens here? And they're like, oh yeah, it skips. I'm like, but are we doing that with our voices? No, we're not doing that with our voices. Okay, well, what does that sound like? And then what does that look like comparatively? So we're trying to get what we hear matched up to what we see. And so that's one of those tasks where you want to, that's like your goat in a boat, essentially. You could play two things, or you could say, what is that? Where's the skip? And you would want them to be able to say, the skip is here. I could circle it. Or you could say, where do we change direction? And you would want them to say right here, or anything really, but you want them to notice something about that. And you might, play two things. Or you have two things for them to choose from and say, which one did you hear? Which is the right one? Which one did I play, or which one did I sing? Did I play number like A or B? I played B, not A. So.
Practice flashbacks.
Huh?
To practice flashbacks.
Sorry.
Studying for that.
Sorry.
There's like 4 things going on at once. Which line is wrong?
Great. Yeah, thanks, guys. No. And this is why when people take instrumental methods, that's why poor Sam Gravely this semester, I'm like, so we need to get him out into a school as much as possible, because it's literally just him. There's no ensemble to play with and like hear. And once you get up on that box, the first time that you start hearing everybody playing at you all at once, there's a lot going on there. It's a cacophony of sound, and you're like, who's playing wrong? Or who's actually playing correct out of all of the wrong that I hear coming at me? And then what are the different things that are not correct that are happening? We actually just had that this morning in choral methods, where we were listening to somebody play or somebody sing something, and I could see faces at one point in the recording, and I was like, ooh, I saw you guys react to a spot that was sung. What were you reacting to? We went back, we listened to it, and they said, yeah, I think the men are they're flat there. And I said, great, so how do you get them to not do that? Essentially. So how do they not sing flat? What do you tell them? How do you, what do you do there? And so we just came up with different strategies for having them not sing flat. Wouldn't that be great? But anyway, that has nothing to do with this. It's just, hey, you get strategies for doing that. So you can teach literacy in a couple of different ways. You can just do the English language thing, where we say, hey, the word flat, we're learning about flats and sharps in our key signatures. What's the last sound of the word sharp? And you would want them to go, great. That's teaching English language literacy through music. But then there's teaching music literacy and using some of the same things. So when people are like, you don't teach literacy in music, it's like, actually, we do. We do sound awareness all the time. We have them discriminate all the time. And we do something very similar to graphemic awareness, where we ask them what symbol makes the sound that we have either just demonstrated or that we're trying to make, or whatever that thing is. For us, though, there's an added layer of context that English language learning doesn't necessarily have. It has it sometimes, right? Like we were talking about this the other day. These 2 words, I'm gonna do that all year, not that over. These 2 words, they're very similar, right? But these are pronounced the same. These are going to be pronounced different because they're different letters, of course. Why are these pronounced differently? The rule is not always true. Gym, why does it make a J sound, that G? And this one makes G. That's a context specific thing. So sometimes our rules are not always true. Just like when we see this, it's different than when we see this. It's a note head on the 3rd line. How come it's not played the same? Because it's a different context. Or a quarter note isn't always 1 beat because we change the meter sometimes, or whatever the thing is, right? So, hurrah. Is it GIF or GIF, guys? GIF or GIF?
GIF.
Why? Why, Ryan? Why is it GIF?
Because the person that created it says so.
Thank you. Because it's his word. He literally made it up, despite the fact And the argument that we get all the time is, but it's graphical user, or it's graphical image, whatever, file. Yeah, that one. Graphical memory, so it should be GIF. It's like, listen, you didn't make the word up. He said GIF. That's, does it make any sense? No. Does it have to make sense? No, it's a made up word. So there we go. Anyway, so Jim and gum is a great example of when language, like the context, actually matters. But we have to set that context pretty much all the time in music when we're doing, awareness, and they don't necessarily have to do that with English language literacy. So that's a lot of this chapter is that saying, here's how you as the music teacher can do English language activities in what you do. But there's also, here's what this would be like in your classroom, maybe. It touches on that a little less than maybe I would like. So they're talking again about phonemic awareness and what that is, how reading teachers can use music, how music teachers can facilitate reading. And it's more of what we talked about with sharp. What's the last sound in the word sharp? Where we said that. But how can we do it? I think choir directors or elementary music teachers have a slightly easier time at doing this because we have a lot of vocabulary and a lot of words that come to us through songs. In instrumental music, we don't get as many. We get vocabulary words, but we don't have a repertoire of songs that necessarily have words to them unless we're playing a folk song or something and we want the students to know the text or something to that effect. So we can do it, but it doesn't come as naturally. It seems a little less forward. You know what I mean? It's not just right out there. But the big thing for me is those site identifications. There are words that we want kids to know. And what are our music words that we want kids to know, essentially? And I don't just mean vocab, I mean like our actual printed stuff that we want kids to know right away, where we say they should have this down. Like for me as an adult that teaches choir, this is gonna be best. This is gonna be best. This way instead of unpacking all four of them. Unpacking them all is gonna take time doing this. What do I want my kids to know for sure? I for sure want them to know that if I said this as C as do rather, I want them to know that that's do, re, mi, fa, sol. And that should sound a certain way. Like that is a sight word to me. By the time they hit high school, if they don't know that that's do, re, mi, fa, sol, if C is do, I'm gonna be like a very sad panda. So that's a sight word to me. If your kids, if your C instruments, see the B flat major scale, if they see two flats and a key signature, their immediate thought should probably go to B flat, and that's the scale they're gonna use, unless they see wonky stuff and G's everywhere, in which case they should go, that's weird. Why do we have G's all over the place? And what's this F sharp doing here? Then we go, something is not like everything else. We don't always play in major keys. Woo-woo. So then we get to graphophonemic awareness again, where we get to how do these sounds connect to these symbols that we're using. And they talk about how we can do that, how we can support the English language learning in our music classes. But to me, I'm very much interested in how you would want to do that in your own classroom. What would that look like to you? And then of course we get into that cueing system awareness again. What is that? You might need to go back to that earlier chapter in order to be like, oh yeah, cueing system awareness. What is that? I'm not going over it right now because I want your actual thoughts, not the thoughts that I have influenced, but I was like, let's Take a song or a musical task common to your classroom or teaching and determine a phonological focus you could ask your students to attend to. So if you're teaching, whatever it is you're teaching, whether it's band, whether it's choir, whether it's piano, what is a thing that you could have your students attend to via sound that would make sense for them to attend to, that you would actually ask them to do, right? And then what is a site identification pattern that you would want your students to know, or you would hope they know? Please don't use do, re, mi, fa, so, or B flat major as your key signature, since we talked about those in class. And then if you were talking to a parent about cueing system awareness, not that I think you will ever do that, but what would it look like? And not a, when I say cueing system awareness, Sam, I don't mean that, right? Like not that kind of cue, the kind we're talking about in the book. So does that help a little bit? Maybe?
I have a question.
Sure.
For number one, do you want to start play a song for you? Like present the song to you, or just explain it?
You can just explain it. You could say, hey, I'm going to present to them a bunch of longs and shorts, and I want them to be able to tell me where the longs are, or I want them to move on the longs, or I'm going to present to them highs and lows, and on the highs I want them to reach up, or blah, 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 or every time that they would sing do, I want them to do this. I don't want to take away too many of them. I have so many ideas for that, so I'm not going to say them because there's a lot. But yeah, also, hooray for that system. That just makes me so happy, you guys. That is gonna make it possible for me to eventually play the trombone like I know what I'm doing. It's the one brass instrument that I really can't do anything on. I'm like, B flat, I know B flat, I know that one, that's this one. Hooray.
I didn't even realize that system until today. My brain was doing me a loop when I was like, well, what side can be flat, this side can C.
It's so somebody told that to me because I said I've never really sat down with the trombone and like learned it or understood it and how the slide positions work. And somebody goes, oh, it's the same as the valves. Do the chromatic scale and it lines up. And I was like, no. They said, yes. Because you know that like trombones can be valved. And I'm like, yeah, marching trombones are valved. They like, not all the ones that you see, but like when you watch a DCI, those are valve trombones. Of course they can valve it. Of course they can. Morgan, how did you not know this? So I'm going to take over the world now. Now I'm going to be able to know. I'm very excited. All right, Sam, here's your recording. It is what it is.